the financing of it, the governance and leadership. In a way, setting the scene in terms of the key challenges is a good place to start. And I'm also very delighted that one of our colleagues from WHO HQ in Geneva, working on urban health, whilst not able to join us physically today, will take us through the work of WHO in this area and some of the ideas and principles of achieving health cities of the future. If I could have my slides, please. Whilst they're struggling with the slides, I think I can start by telling you that from yesterday's conversation, for those of you who were able to join, we started talking about the dynamics of cities, both in terms of rapid urbanization, the demographic shift that we are seeing, the epidemiologic transition, and of course, the impact of cities on population health. Cities have become really popular human settlements. More than 50% of the world's population now live in urban areas. And that's 70% increase compared to just over 5 decades ago, when only about a third of the world population live in urban settlements. What that also means is the cities have a very dramatic impact on the climate and the environment. Whilst just over half of the world's population live in cities, or call it urban settlements, 70% of the world's energy use is in cities. More than 60% of carbon dioxide emission in the world is from cities. Yet, cities account for less than 1% of the Earth's land surface area. So there is definitely quite a significant amount of pressure on cities and populations. COVID-19 was a good evidence of the impact of cities on populations. Cities are now estimated to be the third largest emitters of methane. Can you hear me? Okay, right. How about now? Okay. Fantastic. Right. So maybe I would start again. Something isn't quite working. Right. So I was literally just saying that half of the world's population live in cities. And cities are of different types, shapes, sizes. And if the lights were off, I think you'll be able to see the screen better. What about now? Great. Okay, but don't fall asleep. Right. And as you can see, cities, like I said, come in various shapes and sizes. This could be anywhere in the world, Asia, Europe. That's Bombay, by the way. Most of you will know that's London. That's Seoul. And that's just outside Mexico City. Now, with more than 50% of the world's population living in cities, I was just saying that that's a 70% increase compared to just over 5 decades ago, when only a third of the world's population lived in big urban areas. That rapid urbanization is going to continue. By 2030, more than 2/3 of the world's population are going to live in cities. And cities are known to be beleaguered with issues around sanitation, waste management, groundwater management, water quality, and of course, the issues around crime and violence, and the complex challenges around boundaries with sprawls and elongation of cities, and of course, the demographic shift that is upon us with aging and also young people moving into urban areas. Then I was just at the point where I was talking about the impact of cities on the climate and the environment, and highlighting the fact that whilst just over half of the world's population live in cities, 70% of the global CO2 emissions occur in cities, and about 2/3 of world's energy use happen in cities. And that's where cities are just less than 1% of the total Earthland surface. And then talking about municipal waste, cities are the third largest producers of methane. That's equivalent to about 800 million tons of carbon dioxide emission equivalent. COVID-19 was a very, very good, interesting example of how cities struggled with municipal waste management. We saw pictures from Wuhan where mobile incinerators had to be put into action. But also, cities are not the same across the world. In low middle income countries, people who live in cities face dramatic challenges in terms of transportation, in terms of access to green spaces, in terms of food access, and also in Asia in particular, peripheral peri-urban areas around cities, you've got issues around agricultural waste being burnt and preparing for the next planting seasons. Coastal cities are also particularly challenged. And in this region of the world, this is really an important issue. I worked in the Pacific for the last 4 years before I came to Korea. And virtually every coastal bit of the Pacific really is very concerned about sea level rise, acidification, and all of that. But also, with large population settlements, even if cities are safe and clean, just the fact that you have a lot of people there means that the possibility for transmission of diseases, particularly infectious ones, become a reality. And cities generally are warmer than surrounding areas. So with very hot summers, heat waves and all of that, the impact on cities, and particularly the elderly, the vulnerable, and the young population is quite significant. People have talked a lot about the urban heat island effect. I'm sure my colleagues who are experts in this would tell you a bit more about how do we deal with such issues going forward. So just in summary, cities do have challenges. They have impact on people's health, and across the spectrum from vector-borne disease transmission all the way to injuries, the equity issues that come with it, and of course, health behaviors that would have impact on physical activity, participation, and therefore concerns around non-communicable diseases. The impact of living in slums and informal settlements in and around cities could have dramatic impact on people's mental health and well-being. Nonetheless, cities can also be very vibrant, green, walkable, healthy places for people to live in. But that doesn't happen without adequate planning, without a deliberate effort to make cities healthier and greener. It does need collaboration across policy formulation, urban planning and design, governance, and leadership. And those are the key things that we're going to be talking through as themes of today's session. WHO has been working diligently with member states across the decades to look at how we support cities to become healthier, greener, and safe places for people to live, work, and play. And you will hear a lot more about the Healthy Cities Network and the Urban Health Program of WHO in the next set of presentation from one of my colleagues from Geneva. But I just wanted to highlight that WHO does have publications about urban profiles that will give you a sense of the climate hazards and risks that cities face across the globe, the potential for adaptation and mitigation efforts, and raise awareness about some of the key and important things the cities can do. If I were to stop here, the 4 things that I would ask any city to consider if they wanted to become a resilient, green, and healthy city would be to look at how to make the health systems resilient, to look specifically at how you plan for net zero carbon transition, and prepare for emergencies that are bound to come. And that's both health emergencies and other forms of civil contingent issues. And then primarily to look at how to involve communities and leaders in the policy structure, the governance, and how you prepare for financing healthy cities of the future. And doing this does have co-benefits. Taking a very simple example of transportation that is greener, you can improve air quality. And we know that in this region of the world, about 50% of the premature mortality attributable to air pollution occurs here, 4 out of the 7.6 or so million premature mortality. So you could have a dramatic impact on reducing premature mortality and morbidity from cancers and respiratory illnesses. And of course, directly and indirectly improve cardiovascular health and definitely have an impact on health equity. So it's a good thing for cities to look at climate change, look at health, look at equity, all in one go, by having integrated policies across such. This is just to highlight the complexity of the issues cities face, but also to underline the fact that cities are systems. And in a systematic way, if cities look at all the sources of pollution, tackle them in an integrated way, and carefully balance the technological and economical challenges that they've got as cities grow, then there is a very, very significant chance that cities become healthier for the future. But that does mean some creative approach to policymaking, governance, and leadership. And that wouldn't happen without a level of international cooperation, which is one of the reasons why WHO fosters collaboration of cities. And you would probably know about C40, which is also another conglomeration of cities with mayors and governors coming together to really think about how they can use evidence-based actions to support their cities. What you measure happens. So to get cities to become healthy and greener and more sustainable for the future, there has to be a deliberate effort at monitoring actions and doing impact assessment. You could call it health impact assessment, you could call it environmental impact assessment. And that doesn't end there. It has to be part of policy decision making. And that fits into the urban planning processes and infrastructure for the future. So, in many ways, what I'm saying is the cities of the future would need long-term design plans that are friendly to all ages. They have to promote sustainable use of resources. And that includes what happens with buildings, with industry, the way we do agriculture, the way we move from one end of the city to the other, and the way the cities are designed, because elongated and sprawling cities do waste resources. And then, of course, there has to be a very deliberate use of policies to support. And I'll give you examples of some of those kind of policies that are happening in our region before I close. And also looking at systems, and I take the health system as a very good example of how cities can really focus sectorally, but also working across sectors in the way we improve cityscape, city use of resources, and making cities low carbon in the way they operate. And of course, you can't do this without good partnerships. And that's partnership across all levels and between levels, private and public partnerships, partnership with the community, with a full engagement, because most of the policies and interventions that have to be taken would involve communities making significant changes to behavior as well. And you can only be successful if you carry them along and involve them in the planning. You will hear a little more about those in the next set of presentations. So just to close off with some examples of policies that are in existence in the region, I take example from China, where the starting point is to look forward over the next 5 years and really target major pollutants in cities. There are several other examples. John G is an expert from China and can tell you a little bit more about some of the work that's going on in this regard. But a combination of using technology as well as using fiscal policies to look at pollution protection is a very good mixture in China. Japan is really very bold and ambitious, with 281 cities looking towards becoming net zero by 2050. And you've got hydrogen-powered buses in cities, and of course, many other investment going on. Mongolia is reputed to be one of the countries with a major capital city, Ulaanbaatar, really struggling with air pollution, which comes from various sources, from transport to coal burning, and putting policies in place to impact on the use of raw coal, and also looking at how to deal with informal settlements in Garo districts, and helping people to buy environmentally friendly heating systems for their homes, and also cars that they use. These are all part of integrated policy making in the country. And of course, we are in Korea with several examples of policies in this regard, but I really pick out the one on fine dust seasonal management, which is both responsive as well as looking forward in the way it approaches the way people are encouraged to work with governments in this area. There is a whole host of interventions to ban use of grade 5 vehicles in cities, looking also specifically at voluntary commitment from the public on reducing the amount of car transport that people use to go to work. If you haven't experienced the metro system, we call the subway in Seoul, I think you should. It's fantastic. And that can discourage people from using their own personal automobile to move around. So I'll leave you with the key important points: that policies that are integrated, that are forward-looking, that are multi-sectoral are extremely important to making cities healthy for the future. To do that, of course, you have to back it with the right financial incentives, the right fiscal policies, and investment that look forward to making cities greener and sustainable. And Dr. Oppong will be talking to us about some of the innovative ways to do that in this region and beyond. But also, with commitments to various international protocols and commitments, making that a reality at the city level becomes a very strong part of the efforts that countries can make. And that's where mayors, governors, local councillors, depending on what you call the local politicians of the day in your part of the world, can do a lot in making this a reality. And I've talked about making sure that we monitor the actions we're taking, we look at the results, and we are able to use the impact assessment that come from that to plan the spread and the range of urbanized settlements that develop in our countries. And without any doubt, engaging the community is the fundamental criteria for success. Because what we are asking people to do is to change behaviors in terms of mobility, in terms of the way they communicate, where they work, how they get to work, where they play, and how their families use the spaces around them. So without further ado, I'll leave you with that which you can read yourself. And I really cherish your coming to join us today, because I think not only do you hear from speakers who are working at the front line on this issue, you can also contribute with your insights, ideas, and share options of the work that you've been doing that can inform the long journey that we have ahead of us. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Akeem Ali of the World Health Organization, for that wonderful talk on climate resilient smart cities. 4 very simple words, but when you put them together, indeed lead to very complex policy making and solutions. Our next speaker is also from the World Health Organization, Dr. Nathaniel Rubo. Dr. Nathaniel Rubo is the unit lead of the Urban Health Headquarter of the Western Pacific region of the World Health Organization. And the presentation topic is a strategic approach to achieving urban health, making the case and making it work. Because Dr. Rubo cannot be with us here today in person, there is a video presentation. Thank you.
Dear colleagues, thank you very much for inviting me to join this session, and please accept my apologies for not being able to be with you in person today. I would like to
Apologies
build
for the
on
various
my colleagues'
technology
former
hiccups.
Presentation and continue to deep dive in best approaches
Someone once
of
told me
integrating
what
health,
could go
environment,
wrong
and
will go wrong.
multi-generational equity within the
Bear with
urban
us.
health work as a key vehicle for addressing global population health, and also leveraging on the concepts and the objectives of smart cities and healthy cities. Please allow me maybe to reinforce some of the messages that has been addressed over the last day and since the beginning of the conference, but I feel that they are really important to set the scene. We are living in a world that is more and more urbanizing, and cities are growing. And as you can see on this slide, not only we see that there are more and more urban areas across the globe, but actually that mega cities of 10 million and more people are actually becoming more and more predominant, and by this entailing a large number of opportunities on one hand, but also a number of challenges on the other hand. And one important maybe aspect to take into consideration, thank you very much that we are inviting me to join cities that do exist, but actually that many of the cities of 2050 still yet today to be built, which is bringing along some additional challenges. Former presentation and obviously and continue to deep dive in urbanization trends need to be put into consideration with a large number of other processes that the world is facing: deforestation, health, intensive agriculture, leveraging intensive animal production, the concepts and the objectives and migration of smart cities and healthy cities do show that increased interaction of the human-animal and environmental interface that particularly are happening also at the urban scale and entailing a number of additional challenges to be taken into consideration. Really important to set and here again the scene. We see that we are living in a world that is more and more while we see population increasing, we also see that this is, as you can see on this slide, increase in the energy that there are more and but also with the water use and in line of the previous that mega cities definitely will have also an impact on tropical forest loss, and by that an impact on biodiversity. So all this is again to show that when we're speaking about urban health, we are actually number of challenges confronted to a complexity of different processes that all need to be taken is not into consideration when addressing cities that do exist, the needs, but actually that many of the cities of 2050 and again still yet have just maybe in conclusion for bringing along some additional we see that cities are really at the heart of public health. I think these figures have been mentioned not only in the presentation, the previous presentation, but across the different sessions so far, that cities are actually facing a number of public health challenges that are 9 in 10 people deforestation, intensive agriculture, air, intensive cities are experiencing pollution and migration, and actually all these different processes do show increased interactions of the human not have access to safely managed sanitation services, but we also see that urbanization is strongly associated with rapid spread of a number of additional challenges to be taken into consideration. Raising, and here again, you also see the persistence of vector-borne communicable diseases, and where we see population increasing, injuries and violence going hand in hand with an persistent increase in the energy use, but also with the water use. So most of the top 10 causes of death actually can be related to urban design and policies. So cities are really facing, and by that, triple threats an impact on biodiversity. So all this is again to show that when we are speaking about urban health, we are actually, and I think now moving confronted to a complexity of different processes about identifying some of the way forward into consideration when arguments of also investing in smart cities and healthy cities and in urban health. And again, broadly, is that actually health inequalities are particularly stark. We see that cities are really at the heart of public health. Approximately 350 million children live in slums. 60% of the refugees and 80% of the internally displaced people actually settle in urban areas. And actually, if you see this one example, 9 in 10 people of the COVID-19 mortality rate in Argentina, you can see that actually the mortality really varied from one city quarter to another. So health inequalities are really a driving force, and urban areas are particularly vulnerable to inequalities. But at the same time, cities are also giving the key opportunity actually to address those inequalities if policies are implemented in the right manner. So moving to, I would say, the different opportunities, but of different intervention types, the solutions that do exist to address urban health more broadly. I would like to give you a selected number of examples coming from very different areas of work, sometimes taking a disease entry point, sometimes taking a determinant entry point or a vulnerable populations entry point. So the first example is about air pollution, and obviously this resonates very much with the presentation that we have just heard on climate change and health impact at the urban level. We know that air pollution is a public health emergency. So we know that 99% of the world's population live in places where the air pollution levels exceed WHO's air quality guidelines. And this is actually resulting in 7 million annual deaths that are attributed to air pollution. And on this slide, we can see that actually cities are actually the areas where the pollution is actually very, very predominant. And depending on the regions, it could be of various nature, but also depending on the pollutants. But certainly what it shows is that the bigger the cities, the higher the population actually within an urban environment, also the number also and the levels of pollution are actually increasing. And so one of the key entry points for taking action is by translating guidelines, WHO guidelines, into policies, into processes at the very urban and national level, obviously, to actually reduce the emissions of the pollution. And so the air quality guidelines and its translation are actually a key vehicle for action. And I would like to give you one specific example of a project, the WHO Urban Health Initiative, that has been implemented in 2 cities, in Accra, Ghana, and Kathmandu, Nepal, where actually there has been an estimation has been made, so a scenario has been calculated of how much actually premature mortality due to actually air pollution due to transport could be avoided depending of what type actually of interventions are being implemented. So there are three different alternatives. One which is, I would say, a more conservative approach, a second one which actually, the first one, so pardon me, is looking also at cordon charges and other vehicle restraint measures. And then the second scenario is that on top of that, land use measures to reduce overall travel demand has been implemented. And then there is a third scenario where actually on top of that, there is a shift from cars to buses and cycling, plus also the type of the bus types, right, that are being used. And you can see that the stronger or the more, the interventions are implemented, actually the higher it will decrease actually the risk for mortality. So it shows that on one hand, one concrete way actually of addressing urban health challenges, and in this specific case air pollution, is the translation actually of air quality guidelines into policy measures at a very local level that will actually aim at, as much as possible, reach the recommendations that are set by WHO. Another entry point, another solution, is actually by using specific areas as an entry point within a city, actually as a delimited space, right, where action will be taken to address urban health outcomes. So in this case, the idea is to look at green spaces. Green spaces is one specific, approach within an urban environment that will actually have multiple benefits on population's health. Green spaces are proven to have an impact on environmental benefits, nature benefits for humans, but also social benefits and mental health benefits. So the pathways are diverse, but ultimately through those different pathways, health impacts will be achieved, positive health impact, by reduced cardiovascular morbidity, reduced diabetes, improved pregnancy outcomes, reduced mortality due to cardiovascular respiratory diseases, but it also there is strong evidence now that green spaces have an impact on improved mental health by reduced depression, improved cognition, and also better physical activity, and therefore impact on mental health. So all this to say is that the second approach that can be taken to address urban health, that to achieve smart and healthy cities, is by using very specific places within the urban environment, in this case green spaces, to actually achieve a large number of co-benefits for health. This is very, very briefly, just to pinpoint to one of the challenges that I've mentioned before, is about the fact that vector-borne diseases are still a predominant threat in actually many countries, and actually are becoming more and more a city-specific threat to health. Something that was maybe seen as more a rural challenge now is becoming an urban challenge. And the reason why I'm mentioning this here is that actually in one of the approaches that can, the solutions, right, that can be taken to address health at the urban level, at the city level, is also to see non-communicable diseases and communicable diseases not as something distinct, but actually to see them that you, with one and the same intervention, for example, through proper urban planning, waste management, water and sanitation, but planning in general, the management of the environmental and city ecosystem, you can actually have an impact both on the non-communicable diseases and the communicable diseases. Well, I think there is no doubt that when speaking about urban health and also how to actually, one of the entry points to look at health at city level, the experience of COVID is really very important. We have seen that the COVID-19 pandemic has almost been like an X-ray of the existing inequities and the divisions in urban settings. This was due to overcrowding and density, but there were a lot of comorbidities, in particular in the global south, when it looks to communicable diseases, and in the global north, mainly on non-communicable diseases. We saw that there was really an interplay between treatment and health-seeking behavior, demographics. So the nimble performance of the city government has been really critical in support of the national government responses to COVID. And one of the lessons learned was also that many of the interventions really needed specially disaggregated local level data in order to be efficient and proactive. So another example of how to, one of the solutions, if I could say, of how to address global health through urban health interventions and by shaping, smart cities, healthy cities as a key vehicle to achieve global health, is actually to see the role that cities are playing in the broader global emergency preparedness discourse. We see that, and you all know that the legally binding international health regulations is one of the key driving mechanisms for protecting populations from global public health emergencies. But there has been a recognition after COVID that actually the preparedness and response of cities and urban settings needed to be actually strengthened, and that a global framework and an operational framework was required to help actually cities to really play their role in ensuring the implementation of the international health regulations. So again, this is a key entry point, a key mechanisms, a key policy option, right? That is absolutely essential for achieving global population's health. And there has been nowadays really the clear recognition of the roles that cities do play in global emergency preparedness and response. And you can see that actually during COVID, we were in the position of collating quite a large number of different experiences, case stories, case studies of cities that have been addressing COVID, both from health systems perspective, but also through addressing key determinants of health within the COVID pandemic, being it in the context of food security and food safety, but also transport and many more. As we were saying, demography changes are a key factor that is impacting our health, and in particular in urban areas. Aging, and we will have some more discussions later on, aging populations are particularly at risk. Our cities are having more and more aging populations, and therefore one of the other key entry points, the key solutions for achieving and enhancing health in urban areas is by putting a specific focus also on the needs of the aging population. And we have here the examples of the work that WHO is doing in many cities across the globe in developing national programs for age-friendly cities and communities. A guide has been launched, and this guide is really highlighting how age-friendly city or communities need to address a large number of different sectors, but at the same time also need to have some mechanisms in place that really put the needs of the elderly population at the heart. And there is a recognition if that is a city is actually responding to the needs of aging population, it will actually be benefiting a large number of population groups, because the changes, the policies, the refurbishments of public and private buildings, etc., but also the policies in place that will benefit the elderly will actually be something that will be positive across the population groups. So another entry point for a solution, if I could say, for addressing health is really by looking at specific vulnerable population groups, and in this case, the aging population. Throughout the different examples that I've been mentioning, I've always been going back to the role of urban planning, and urban planning is really a key approach for an integrated way of addressing health. Urban planning and making sure that health is part of urban planning is actually a key mechanism, that is essential for achieving health at the urban level. WHO has been working together with UN Habitat on developing a source book on how really to integrate health in urban and territorial planning. There has been a collection of case studies, but also you could see on this slide a repository almost of different tools, of different examples, of different materials that actually can be used at a city level for making sure that health is at the core of urban planning and territorial planning approaches. Only if health is at the core of urban and territorial planning, the biggest health achievements can be ensured. And really urban planning can be identified, can be recognized as a key vehicle, a key mechanism to achieve health. And actually, I just want to highlight very briefly here on one example that actually urban planning also needs to take into consideration, needs to involve the communities. Only by having the communities' voices, a hearing of what is needed at the urban level by the different community members, by the different population groups, only by doing this, urban planning can be particularly efficient. And I just wanted to highlight one specific project that is ongoing here, where youth actually are at the core of the urban planning process, and they are actually included in the planning development stages. So we are working currently together with UN Habitat with youth groups, and ask them to actually use the game Minecraft. I'm sure you know about Minecraft, and actually to use Minecraft to shape the public spaces that they feel would be good for their health and for their well-being. And based on this, then urban planning plans will be developed, and a health impact assessment will be done. So having really a community-driven, population-based urban planning approach is essential as a key vehicle for achieving smart and healthy cities. And here you can see that all this different information, all these different tools, all these different data actually can feed into existing analytical tools that can actually support health and economic impact assessments. And those health and economic impact assessment tools can actually help to identify the best policy choices in a given local context. Each city is different. Each environment is different. The risks are different. Although we know about broadly what are the major health implications of transport policies on health, they will always be different in a very specific local context, because obviously the economic development, the different sectors at play will be different. So here you could see a certain number of tools that do exist that actually can help cities to better identify the risks for health, but also to mitigate them. It's about green spaces, it's about how to increase walking and cycling, transportation, air pollution, and others. And WHO has a repository of existing materials that are relevant for urban health. I'm slowly coming to an end, but just to highlight two very important points, is that if we look at smart cities, healthy cities, if we take a health in all policies approach, as we have done so far, it is important to really see those sectoral interventions not as siloed interventions, but to see how they are interconnected. Urban health needs to be seen as something that is a systems approach. There are different developments at stake that are interacting with each other, influencing each other, and therefore urban health can only be seen as something that is, interconnected. And having a clear understanding on this will help actually to find a better solution. There are 4 areas that have been identified to be crucial, implementation approaches to help actually implement the policies in a holistic, integrated way. And it's to strengthen observation analysis for health, to be innovative, to increase governance and finance, and also to have a stronger partnership and participation approach. WHO is working on those 4 areas. 2 first briefs have just been launched on governance and financing and on observation analysis. 2 more will follow. And actually, all this will feed into an upcoming strategic guide that WHO will be launching early next year that will help governments, both at the national and then local, to really shape urban health in a consolidated, integrated way. And all this, though, is only possible if um, key stakeholders at the different levels have the capacities. We very often assume that the key stakeholders, being them from local government or national government, being them from civil society organizations or other partners, we very often assume that all these stakeholders have actually the capacities for urban health. But this is not the case. Very often the trainings, the curriculum are very, siloed and very specific. And therefore, if we want to make sure that we achieve smart cities for health, healthier cities, right? And if we want to ensure that we take urban health as an a programmatic approach, we need to make sure that the capacities for observation analysis are in place, that actually the allocation of human and financial resources, that people learn how actually to do it, that actually partnership and social participation and knowledge sharing, we often feel that this is something that everybody should be able to do, but these connective capacities actually need to be trained. So we are really putting the emphasis. So one of the key entry points for achieving better health outcomes is by building those capacities. And we are currently working on doing 2 things. On one hand, developing a training course on capacities for urban health, and this will be part of WHO's academy and will be launched by the end of 2024. But we are also developing a framework or an assessment tool, if you want, that will allow any individual or an organization or an institution that is actually dealing with urban health. So it could be one person within the municipality, but it could also be the public health team within the Ministry of Health or at the municipal level, or anybody else who would like to assess whether he or she or the group has actually the capacities to actually do integrated urban health work. And so this framework will help to position themselves and then to identify strengths, but also gaps, and then also make an action plan of how actually to overcome possibly gaps identified. So with this, I'm coming to an end of my presentation. And just to reiterate that all these different works, all these different entry points, solution, all these policies, all this knowledge, all this is only possible, if I could say, drawing from the large number of experiences that all the cities of this world are actually sharing. And so we really would like to thank all of you, all cities, for sharing their knowledge and experience, and we very much look forward continuing to work with you. Thank you very much. conservation analysis are in place, that actually the allocation of human and financial resources, that people learn how actually to do it, that actually partnership and social participation and knowledge sharing, we often feel that this is something that everybody should be able to do, but these connective capacities actually need to be trained. So we are really putting the emphasis. So one of the key entry points for achieving better health outcomes is by building those capacities. And we are currently working on doing two things. On one hand, developing a training course on capacities for urban health, and this will be part of WHO's academy and will be launched by the end of 2024. But we are also developing a framework or an assessment tool, if you want, that will allow any individual or an organization or an institution that is actually dealing with urban health. So it could be one person within the municipality, but it could also be the public health team within the Ministry of Health or at the municipal level, or anybody else who would like to assess whether he or she or the group has actually the capacities to actually do integrated urban health work. And so this framework would help to position themselves and then to identify strengths, but also gaps, and then also make an action plan of how actually to overcome possibly gaps identified. So with this, I'm coming to an end of my presentation. And just to reiterate that all these different works, all these different entry points, solution, all these policies, all this knowledge, all this is only possible, if I could say, drawing from the large number of experiences that all the cities of this world are actually sharing. And so we really would like to thank all of you, all cities, for sharing their knowledge and experience. And we very much look forward continuing to work with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that presentation. Those are the two keynote addresses from the World Health Organization session on the practical approaches for smart cities. Next, I would like to invite the panelists up for a discussion. Our time allotted is 9:50 to 10:30. And while the organizers set up the chairs, I would like to introduce each of the panelists. And when I introduce you, could you kindly come to the stage? Our first panelist is Lee Hyung-suk. Lee Hyung-suk is from the Ministry of Health, and he is the director of the Gyeonggi Province Public Health Center. Please welcome Lee Hyung-suk. Thank you. Our second panelist is also from the Ministry of Health, from the Seoul Gandong District Public Health Center director. Thank you. These two panelists may speak in Korean, and we have these translation devices for everyone to hear for simultaneous translation. Our next panelist, whom I met yesterday, Dr. Stephanie Cromier from Louisiana State University. She is the endowed chair and professor of biological sciences. She also has affiliated position at the University of Queensland in Australia, and she is a world-renowned expert with over 20 years of experience in the field of pulmonary immunology, focusing on the role of age and environment in immunity. Our next speaker, our next panelist, Dr. Catherine Bowen. I invite you to come up. She is the professor of climate, environment, and global health in the Melbourne School of Population and Global Health, and she's the deputy director of the Melbourne Climate Future Center. She is a leading internationally recognized expert of science and policy of sustainability, particularly climate change and global health. And our last panelist I'd like to invite up is Dr. Yong-hee Ha, whom I met 2 days ago. She is the Dean of the College of Medicine, and she has also worked in the World Health Organization in Geneva to participate in preparation of the guideline on air pollution and health on children. And since 2006, she has also supervised a birth cohort in Korea to lead research in the field of children's environmental health. Great. And do we also have our first speaker, Dr. Akeem Ali, here? No, he won't. Oh, he won't be joining us for this discussion. Okay, great. All right. Should I join you up there or? Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. All right. To start off, I think we heard from Dr. Akialim at the beginning of the presentation that right now, about half of the world's population live in urban areas and live in cities. From each of your research domain expertise, I'd like to ask a normative question, which is, what percentage of the population in the world ought to live in cities? And what are some of the opportunities and future hazards for health that we could prepare today so that we can lower the morbidity burden in the future? Perhaps we can just go around and then answer that question. Yes, Dr. Ha.
Actually, I think in Korea, especially South Korea, the declining population and its potential impact on future generations have really significant implications for the children's environmental health. So, because especially in urban settings, as the population ages and shrinks, there will be a greater need to ensure that children have access to safe and healthy environments in which to grow and development. Because every children, and under this low birth rate, every children is so precious. So this will require a comprehensive approach that addresses the following 3 key areas. First area is the monitoring environmental exposures and health risks. In Korea, it is not established yet because children are particularly vulnerable to environmental pollutants and toxins due to their developing bodies and immature immune systems, as you know. In urban environments, children face exposure to air pollution, water contamination, and hazardous waste, which can lead to a range of health problems, including respiratory issues and neurological developments and development delays. Secondly, to assess the green spaces and recreation is really needed. Children's physical and mental health are closely linked to their access to green spaces and opportunities for outdoor recreations. Urban areas often lack adequate green spaces in Korea as well. The living children with limited opportunities for physical activities and structured play and connected with nature is really a problem because in Korea, by high school student, the so competitive and social stress is really, really extreme and very competitive, stressful situations. So that will be very important. And third, finally, we need to have sustainable urban planning. As Akeem said, especially long-term design is really needed. The design and planning of urban environments must prioritize children's health, especially children's environmental health and well-being. This includes creating walkable and bikeable and communities, promoting public transportation and incorporating green spaces and recreational areas into urban planning. For these 3 areas, for solving these 3 areas, I would like to say 5 strategies to solving these problems. The first one is environmental health monitoring and intervention to implement comprehensive monitoring programs to identify and address environmental hazards that pose risks to children's health. Secondly, to promote environmental education and to foster environmental awareness and knowledge among children through education program. This is not only offline program, but also online program. I am thinking about that developing the children's environmental TV program, but no broadcasting is interested in. So I insist more over and over. Third thing should be enhancing access to green spaces to create and expand public parks, playgrounds, and community gardens in urban areas. Fourthly, promoting active transportations to encourage walking, cycling, and public transportation use among children and their families. Finally, I think this is most important thing. Intergenerational dialogue and collaboration is really needed to bridge the gap between generations by fostering dialogue and collaboration between policymakers, urban planners, and healthcare professionals, educators, and parents as well. By connecting these 5 strategies posted by Future South Korea's declining population and prioritizing children's environmental in urban setting, we could create a healthier, more sustainable, and child-friendly future for generation to come.
Thank you, Dr. Han. You spoke those words, and it really resonates in my heart because I really believe in everything you said. And I'd like to invite Professor Bowen to take that question and also add on an additional question to you is, could you share some successful examples of policy implementation that has made positive impacts on sustainability, urban health, and possibly the aging population?
Thank you. And I think, so your first question was, to what degree, the normative concept about urbanisation, and to what degree should we be encouraging individuals to move into urban areas?
That's right.
Yeah.
Half of the world's population live in cities, and the presentation said by 2030, 2/3 of the population would live in cities. And the question is, should people live in cities? Should more people live in cities? Should we encourage people to live in cities?
Yeah, I mean, it's absolutely something that comes down to individual decision making, but it also depends on the services that are available. So a lot of the reason behind the shift to urban settings, particularly for younger people, is for employment. And so there's a discussion going on globally around, well, how do we ensure that communities outside of urban settings provide the same sort of opportunities, particularly for our younger generations. We also see a shift in terms of our aging population, which we know in terms of low and middle income countries where I mainly work, particularly in the Pacific region, a lot of people, when we get older, we move outside of the city. So that's a really important thing to understand and respect as well. So I suppose from my perspective, it's about individuals deciding what works best for them depending on their circumstances. But from a governance perspective, to ensure that the essential services, whether these be healthcare, education, employment, are available. And I think this is where we often do have a very strong focus on cities' infrastructure, but not a strong focus on that infrastructure in rural settings. In low and middle income countries by 2050, 80% of older people will be in low and middle income countries globally. So it's a really important discussion to be having. And in terms of the ageing population, between 2015 and 2050, the proportion of the world's population over 60 years will nearly double from 12% to 22%. So when decision makers are formulating solutions to urbanisation and other pressing issues, we really need to consider this increase in our ageing population, as we heard before. And I think that we are confronted with a plethora of challenges that we're needing to deal with in urbanised settings in particular. We know that many of our cities and urban settlements are on the coast, and in terms of your question around what are the threats that are going to be emerging and already exist, these are really clear in terms of climate change and natural hazards. So, for example, we know that extreme weather events will increase in their intensity and their frequency. So cyclones, flooding, fires. We also know that slow onset hazards are on the rise. And so these are things like drought and long-term drying, of course, sea level rise, which is particularly severe in the countries where I work in the Pacific and is an existential threat. So many of our urban populations are exposed to those shocks and stressors, and so it's critical that our planning understands this systems approach to our urban design and our the provision of essential services, including health.
Any examples of successful policy implementation?
Yeah, so we've just hot off the press, we've been doing some work with our colleagues at the ACE office, and we've been looking at what is the current state of knowledge on the intersection between healthy ageing, sustainable urban and community settings, and climate change. So we've been looking at to what degree is this sort of information and these lessons, are they available for us to start discussing? I won't go through the whole hot off the press report, but we've found 6 overall sort of results. There's a very small number of publications that look at all of those issues. That's our biggest concern at the moment. So there might be a lot of knowledge around what's working, but very rarely does it get into the published peer-reviewed literature. So we also looked at grey literature. But it's a real issue for decision makers when there's scarce information available. The focus is on the global north, and as I just said, by 2050, 80% of older people will be living in lower middle income countries. So that's a real concern as well. And the concept of climate resilient, age-friendly cities provides the strongest model for intervention. So frameworks based on climate resilient cities, like the C40 framework that Dr. Akim mentioned earlier, really offer the greatest potential for incorporating climate change action with age-friendly and sustainable cities and communities, because a climate resilience model offers an integrated understanding of considering climate change impacts. So there are some examples. There's the UK Healthy Ageing and Climate Change Co-Design project that's currently underway, but I realise we're short of time, so there. But there are some promising examples.
Thank you. Dr. Stephanie Cormier, could you address those questions? And I would also like to add on the concept of One Health. Could you also introduce One Health into the discussion?
Okay, great. I hate to say this, but it sounds like a memory game as we go, a drinking game. I don't have any of you played. Anyway, so first of all, thank you everyone for being here, for letting me be here. I'm going to start off at the top. And the first question was whether or not moving into cities actually presents opportunities and or hazards. I think there are definitely opportunities for people moving into cities. Those are both financial and healthcare associated. I come from a rural environment. Healthcare there is substandard compared to cities, and aging populations have extreme trouble, at least in the United States, in rural areas actually getting to healthcare providers. So those are dramatic issues between rural and urban areas. But as you move into urban areas, there are a lot of things that change, some of which have already been mentioned. We lose green spaces. We lose the ability to play outside and work outside. And so all of us actually, from moms that are pregnant with children to the aged population, spend more time indoors. There's a lot of pollution that's actually present indoors. That's some of it's particulate matter pollution, which is some of the stuff that I work in. And that pollution actually leads to health impacts from in utero all the way to death. And the things that are happening in utero are things that we can't change. And they lead to chronic, lifelong dysfunctions in our respiratory systems, in our cardiovascular systems, in our neural systems, and even in our growth, where they stunt our growth. And so there are lots of disadvantages to moving into urban areas, and those disadvantages have long-term complications. I think the other thing is that we haven't talked about is that also it leads to less recreation. A lot of us as children probably spend a lot of time running around outside playing at playgrounds, and that doesn't happen, at least in rural environments in America, because parents are scared to let their children go out to play, either because they're worried about somebody stealing their child or some sort of violence happening at those playground areas. So children actually exercise less. That leads to metabolic disorders and obesity increases, which we're seeing, and those all compound all of the other morbidities that we started to talk about, including cardiovascular, respiratory, and neurological issues. And then the one thing we actually haven't talked about was respiratory tract infections. Staying indoors, staying in large congregated areas with lots of people actually increases respiratory tract infections, both viral, fungal, well, viral, bacterial, and fungal, so all three. And the morbidity and mortality from those are actually enhanced by indoor air pollution. And that we've started to see with COVID specifically. Let's see, the last question, what was the last question? There goes the memory game.
It was it was on One Health.
Oh, One Health. So I think that, so One Health is a complicated subject that we've been talking about for a very long time, but we actually fail to get it right. One Health means that we actually need to be talking across sectors, and while we give a lot of words and credence to One Health and the importance of One Health, the actual work of One Health is not being done because we're failing to communicate across those sectors. And we've started talking about this since yesterday in this meeting. Communication across those sectors is very critical. We all know that avian flu is first detected by veterinarians, most likely in the field. But do those veterinarians actually talk to the MDs and say this is coming? And do the MDs actually say, you know, we've got this and it showed up on a farm or a worker on a farm, and should we be looking at the population? Those conversations don't happen. And they happen even less in rural areas, which is where our farming is actually occurring. So One Health is critical to identify the emerging pandemics that we're going to be going through. It's also good as sort of a sentinel population. So what we can do, and did somebody talk about cows? I think somebody talked about cows and air pollution, right? So we can actually use animals within those rural settings to look at environmental exposures and to see whether or not those are going to have impacts on human health. But we're not doing this stuff. We're doing them in silos. And so One Health is going to be critical, but I think we have to figure out how to make One Health an actionable item instead of what it currently is, which is just something we talk about.
Wonderful. Thank you. I'd like to invite Choi Jung-so to speak to us. You're from the Ministry of Health, so you see a lot of things happening on a day-to-day basis. We'd love to hear from your experiences.
Okay. I'm working at Seoul Gangdong Public Health Center as a director. There's a lot of Korean people here, so I will use a Korean language. Please use a translator machine, channel 3 or 4. 서울시에는 25개의 디스트릭트가 있습니다. 25개 디스트릭트에는 25 Public Health Center가 있습니다. 저는 거기에서 디렉터로 일하고 있습니다. After COVID-19에서 한국은 K-방역에서 성공했다는 평가를 받고 있습니다. 그러나 현재 한국의 퍼블릭 헬스케어는 방향성에 대해서 고려를 하고 있고 저희가 생각하고 있는 것은 3 리스크 팩터입니다. COVID number 1 is COVID-19 전에는 한국은 카디오바스큘러 디지즈 예방에 있어 프리벤션에 있어서 메타볼릭 신드롬 프리벤션을 중심으로 굉장히 성공적인 퍼블릭 헬스 센터를 운영해 왔습니다. 그런데 코비드 19 이후에는 인펙셔스 디지즈가 메인이 되면서 그 이전에 그 카디오바스큘러 디지즈에 대한 프리벤션이라든지 그런 퍼블릭 헬스의 어떤 방향성을 약간 잃어버린 상태입니다. 그런데 현재 중요한 것은 인펙셔스 디지즈가 중요하기도 할 수 있지만 NCD, Non-Communicable Disease가 굉장히 중요한 상태입니다. 왜냐하면은 서울은 2000년에 20년 전에 65세 이상의 인구가 35만 명이었습니다. 그런데 불과 2023년인 지금 20년이 지나서 170만, 즉 약 5배 이상의 65세 이상의 인구가 한국에 폭발적으로 증가하게 됐습니다. 그렇기 때문에 한국은 코비드-19 같은 그런 인펙션 디지즈가 중요할 수도 있지만 실제로는 에이징 소사이어티가 되면서 그 카디오바스큘러 디지즈의 프리벤션과 매니지먼트가 굉장히 임포턴트한 그런 리스크로 지금 관리가 되고 있는데 한국의 많은 지금 그 포커스는 인펙셔스 디지즈로 맞춰져 있기 때문에 한국에서는 퍼블릭 헬스 시스템을 다시 한번 재정비해야 되는 그러한 상황에 이르렀다고 생각이 됩니다. 넘버 2, 리스크 팩터 2입니다. 한국에서는 지금 투표권이 voting people이 over 20 voting people age가 over 20입니다. 그래서 children과 티네이저가 퍼블릭 헬스 어떤 사업에서 많이 소외가 되는 그러한 계층이 됐습니다. 그러다 보니까 코비드-19 이후에 한국의 청소년에 많은 문제가 발생했는데 아무도 관심을 갖지 않는 부분에 대해서 좀 얘기하려고 하고 있습니다. 첫 번째로는 일렉트릭 시가렛입니다. 한국에서 이전에 청소년 티네이저들이 코비드 전에는 일렉트릭 시가렛을 많이 사용하지 않았습니다. 근데 한국에서 법의 사각지대로 되면서 한국에서는 지금 여성과 청소년이 일렉트릭 시가렛을 쉽게 구할 수 있는데 현재 한국에는 어떤 퍼블릭한 그러한 정책이 나오지 않고 있습니다. 코비드 이후에 저희가 리스크 팩터로 다루고 있는데 지금 이 자리에서도 아무도 일렉트릭 시가렛에 대해서 얘기하지 않고 있습니다. 두 번째로 SNS 어딕션입니다. 한국에서는 지금 틱톡, 인스타그램 등등으로 많은 아이들이 SNS, 인터넷에 어딕션이 돼 있는 상태입니다. But 아무도 퍼블릭 헬스에서 SNS 어딕션에 대해서 오늘 이 자리, 어제도 들어본 적이 별로 없습니다. 이러한 새로운 문제에 대해서 저희가 새로운 어떤 퍼블릭 헬스케어에 대한 도전적인 과제로 받아들여야 될 거라고 생각합니다. 또한 그 자본주의에서 저희가 한국에서는 경제적 계층과 상관없이 encouraging luxury consumption을 지금 하고 있습니다. 많은 그 유명 회사 애플 아이폰이라든지 아니면 여성으로 말하면 루이비통 같은 그런 제품 그리고 명품 차, 뭐 테슬라, BMW 등이 한국에서 굉장한 마케팅을 하고 있고 한국에서 굉장히 경제적으로 어려운 분들까지 이러한 명품 소비를 부추기고 있는데 이러한 것들이 굉장히 한국에서 멘탈 헬스 프로블럼을 일으키고 있습니다. 왜냐하면은 그러한 것들은 필링 오브 에리어네이션을 부추기고 있기 때문입니다. 그래서 한국에서는 이러한 부분에 대해서 조금 정책을 세워야 된다고 생각하며 또한 청소년에 있어서 유튜브나 틱톡에서 배드 인플루언서가 있습니다. 이러한 배드 인플루언서나 아니면 대중음악, 힙합 래퍼 같은 사람들은 한국에서 이전에 없었던 드러그 등을 아무렇지도 않은 거로 이렇게 인디렉트하게 인커리지먼트를 하는 상황으로서 한국은 지금 코비드 이후에 많은 지금 리스크에 노출이 돼 있습니다. 그래서 한국 보건의료는 이전에는 좋았을 그 카디오바스큘러 시스템에서 좋은 성과를 얻었지만 애프터 코비드에서 그 새로운 그런 어떤 정책 방향을 만들어야 하는 상황이라고 생각을 합니다. 이상입니다.
Thank you so much for your speech. It brought attention to me that the social environment in cities is also incredibly different from rural environments. So it's not just the physical environment that's changing health and public health. I like to, and I also heard that your department is incredibly data driven because you present a lot of data, so you use numbers to make decisions. I'd like to invite Lee Hyung-suk to answer these questions, and also to add on one more question, which is, can you introduce the area that you're the director of the Ministry of Health for, and tell us if it's an urban area, whether it has transformed in what way in the past decades. Thank you.
예, 저는 광명시 보건소에서 일하고 있습니다. 퍼블릭 헬스 센터에서 그 디렉터로 일을 하고 있고, 일단 그 가장 도심에 가까운 그 지역이라고 생각합니다. 광명시는 인구가 28만 5천쯤 되고 거의 그 농촌 지역이라는 게 없습니다. 그래서 거의 도시화되어 있고, 그렇다 보면 도시가 가진 문제를 모두 다 갖고 있는 그런 도시입니다. 그래서 그 발표에서도 나왔다시피 도시가 가진 문제들에서 그 벗어나기 위해서 좀 더 건강하게 그 지역사회를 유지하기 위해서 도시적인 측면에서는 그 저희 시가 정원 도시를 꿈꾸면서 일단 그린에 집착하는 그런 면을 가지고 있습니다. 그 광명시는 38.5 제곱킬로미터 정도밖에 되지 않기 때문에 그 도시 전체에서 아파트를 빼고 나면 남는 녹지들이 거의 없습니다. 그래서 그렇다면 최소한의 공간에라도 녹지를 만들고, 녹지로 조성이 가능한 곳은 모두 다 녹지를 만들기 위해서 노력하는 도시입니다. 그래서 아파트 옥상이나 이런 데는 그 그린 에너지를 생성하기 위한 태양광 패널을 설치를 하고, 그 다음에 작은 공간이라도 나오면 소공원을 조성을 하거나, 일단 길가의 가로수나 이런 데들까지 몽땅 다 그 녹색화를 하기 위해서 그 작은 공원이라도 만들어서 일단 거기에서 얻는 정서적인 심리적인 지지를 주기 위해서 모든 공간을 그 작은 공원으로, 그래서 그거를 자발적으로 시가 전체가 다 하는 게 아니라 주민이 참여를 해서 일단 내가 저거를 해보고 싶다라고 시에다 신청을 하면 거기에 일부 예산을 주고 그 사람이 꽃을 가꾸고 풀을 심고 나무를 심을 수 있는 그런 것들을 제공을 하고 있는, 그래서 일단 도시가 가진 문제 중에서 가장 큰 뭐 에어폴루션이라든지 그 다음에 그 되게 아파트만 있어서 그 그린이 아닌 회색만 보이는 공간을 좀 더 밝게 보이게 하는 공간 조성을 하기 위해서 시가 대단히 노력을 하고 있습니다. 그런 것과 아울러서 그 도심이다 보니까 사고가 나거나 아까 폭력적인 사건들이 생기는 거에 대비하기 위한, 그래서 그 일단 그린폴 이런 거를 만들었습니다. 그래서 그 신호등 같은 걸로 그 보시면 되겠는데, 거기에서 일단 공기의 그 질도 측정을 하고 지나가는 사람들의 폭력성이 있거나 이런 그 문제가 생겼을 때 바로바로 캐치를 할 수 있는 통합 관제 센터가 있습니다. 그래서 그 어떻게 보면 일상을 감시하는 게 되겠지만 그렇지 않고 사고가 나거나 이랬을 때 빨리 대처할 수 있는 그런 체계를 갖추고 있는 도시입니다. 그래서 그 도시화되면서 아까 지적하신 것처럼 노령화되는 것들도 당연히 문제가 되고 있습니다. 그래서 노령화된 어르신들에 대한 그 건강관리, 보건 서비스는 이제 보건소가 주로 담당을 하기는 하지만 그래도 다른 그 사회복지나 이런 곳들과 같이 통합적으로 서비스를 제공하는 거에 중점을 두고 있습니다. 아까 그 보건소장님께서 말씀하신 것처럼 그 만성질환 관리인 고혈압 당뇨 같은 경우에는 저희 시가 2012년 이전부터 그 등록관리 교육 시스템을 운영을 하고 있습니다. 그래서 2012년 WHO가 그 저희 대한민국에 방문을 했을 때 만성질환 관리로는 광명시에 있는 시스템이 가장 좋다라는 평가를 받았는데, 그 시스템을 아직까지 이어와서 그 고혈압 당뇨 환자들을 모두 다 의원에서 등록을 해줍니다. 그래서 의료기관과 약국과 저희 보건소가 다 같이 협업을 해서 의료기관에서 환자를 등록을 해주시면 저희가 그 환자가 약을 잘 먹는지 안 먹는지 그 주기적으로 관리를 해서 30일치 약 받아갔는데 30일 이후에 의료기관에 오시지 않으면 저희가 직접 전화하고 이러는 시스템으로 만성질환 환자들을 직접적으로 관리를 하고 있습니다. 이렇게 그 의료계와 저희가 협업해서 관리를 하다 보니까 다른 지역보다는 합병증 발생률이나 그 합병증으로 인한 입원 일수가 상당히 많이 줄어서 대단히 많은 경제적인 효과도 있습니다. 그렇기 때문에 만성질환 관리를 보건소 전체가 뭘 한다고 해서 다 할 수는 없습니다. 그러면 거기에 환자를 보는 의료계가 당연히 그 개입을 해야 하고 의료계에서 처방전 쓰면 약을 줘야 되는데 그럼 약을 먹는 것들을 약사회에서 정말 정확하게 설명하고 그 협업을 하기 때문에 그 만성질환 환자들의 합병증 발생률이나 그 수능 약에 대한 투약 수능률이 올라가는 것 같습니다. 그래서 그 보건소가 뭘 다 하는 게 아니라 지역사회랑 협업을 통해서 지속적으로 뭔가를 일을 만들어 가고 일을 해나가고 있는 게 저희 시의 특징이라고 할 수 있습니다. 근데 그 아울러서 저희 시가 그 녹색 공간을 조성하지만 그 녹색 공간을 이어서 시 전체를 이어서 걸어갈 수 있는 걷는 길들에 대해서도 집중적으로 그 추진을 하고 있습니다. 사업 추진을 하고 있어서 그 길을 걸으면 저희 시 같은 저희 보건소에서는 일부의 인센티브를 주고 좀 더 많이 걷게 하고 그다음에 시는 좀 더 돈을 많이 들여서 시민들이 걷기 좋은 환경의 길을 지속적으로 그 만들어가고 있는 그래서 결국은 좀 더 건강하게 그리고 환경을 오염시키지 않고 잘 지역사회에서 살 수 있도록 하는 것들에 집중을 하는 도시입니다. 그 아까 말씀하신 원헬스에 대한 얘기를 하셨었는데 저희가 살아가는 공간 안에 원헬스를 신경 쓰지 않을 공간은 없을 거라고 생각을 합니다. 일단 그 조류 인플루엔자 얘기를 하셨지만 그 소라든가 그다음에 다른 돼지라든가 이런 것들로 통해서 그 매개체로 해서 옮겨지는 질환이 되게 많이 있습니다. 그래서 소들 같은 경우에도 그 저희 그 수의사들이 브루셀라나 이런 데 감염되기도 하고 뭐하고 하면서 일단 동물에 관한 전염병이 인간에게 오는 것들이 어느 하나의 문턱을 넘으면 그 코비드에서 저희가 모두 다 같이 고생했던 것처럼 그렇게 또 다른 팬데믹을 만들 수 있기 때문에 일단 인간이 사는 공간만 편한 게 아니라 동물이 사는 공간까지도 좀 더 그 편안하고 일단 동물의 그 주체성을 가지고 잘 살 수 있도록 인간이 너무나 동물을 학대하는 분위기가 아닌 동물이 살 수 있는 환경을 조성해 주면서 동물과 같이 사는 것들을 좀 더 노력을 해서 신경 쓰고 해야 하지 않을 때 아닌가 싶습니다. 네, 이상으로 저 발표 마치겠습니다. 감사합니다.
It's wonderful to hear about the greening projects and the gardens. I actually had a garden of my own, and then I realized doing research is much easier than gardening. We are at the closing, and I like to ask the final question to our speakers is, what does the word smart in smart cities mean to you? And the reason I ask is because prior to the session, I read a commission report from a gentleman down there from the World Health Organization written 10, 20 years ago. And 10, 20 years ago, the World Health Organization was also talking about sustainable futures, integrating health and environment and multi-generation equity. But the word that I didn't see in the report from 2 decades ago is the word smart. And then I realized I actually don't really know what the word smart means. So I perhaps as a concluding thought, could you say what the word smart means to you?
Smart means like a little the automatically intelligent solutions could be in it. So like as I told you, two Korean director of the healthcare center said several things, but they do not say environmental health issues for the children. So meaning that those kind of comprehensive issues could be done by smart way. It's not just offline education, just like, we in Korea, we use, all of the students and all of people use this cell phone. So this is kind of, this tool is smart way. That's fine.
It's good to get some engagement from the audience if the panelists do not mind. Yeah.
Actually, scientifically, people don't know if we ask our immune system. I just wrote three points. If we ask our immune system, which is better, city or rural area, the immune system would say the rural area is much better. This is one of the scientifically proven. And the other thing is, living in a high sky building is a very big mistake, in my opinion. Even though the Korean government tried to solve this problem by making green space at the top, but it will not work, because what we call it is hypoxia in medicine. The more you go up, the less oxygen will be. That's proof. And the more you go down to the earth, the more oxygen will be. People don't know. The trunk of the tree can produce 60% oxygen. The leaves, 20% oxygen, and the roots, 20% oxygen. So the more close to the earth, the better quality oxygen and more sufficient for the people. The other thing is the last one. In terms of disease, actually in disease, we have two problems. The first problem is what we call it is redox dysregulation. That means in terms of food. The other one is the inflammation dysregulation. We need a basic level of inflammation. Even the people who live in the rural area and they got bitten by a mosquito, clean mosquito, that would be good. That's the basic level of inflammation, what we call it in medicine. I am an energy medicine specialist, okay? And the other thing that if we walk as a barefooted and you got like something.
I gotta conclude this session so
okay.
that the speakers can finish. Otherwise, the organizers are going to fire me and not invite me back in the future. Professor Bowen.
Oh, so just a quick response. I think a smart city is one that ascribes to the principles of a climate resilient development. So we know that climate change is the greatest threat to our human health and well-being, and we need to look to cities that understand the importance of adaptation, mitigation and sustainable development. And at the core of a climate resilient city is equity and justice. So making sure that people have the best health that they can achieve and all the other essential elements in terms of education and other issues. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Stephanie Cormier, the word smart.
This like an NIH panel. I agree with what everyone else has said before me, and I would like to add to that. I think one of the things that SMART means to me is we use a broad spectrum of knowledge. So we don't rely on one person to run everything. We talk to the agriculturists, we talk to the sociologists, we talk to the immunologists, we talk to the veterinarians and the MDs, and we have everybody on board that can apply all of that knowledge to complex problems. Complex problems can't be solved by one discipline. Then we take data. We have to be data smart, we have to mine the data, and we have to use AI to help us mine that data, because as humans, we're not capable of processing all of that information.
That was a high percentile answer from NIH board. Thank you. Dr. Choi.
예. 건강도시에서 스마트란 저는 이렇게 생각합니다. 두 가지로 생각하는데요. 첫째는 개인과 집단이 자신의 건강의 중요성을 알 수 있게 하고, 두 번째로는 스스로 관리할 수 있게 하는 encouraging 시스템이라고 생각합니다.
E.
저희가 보통 보건기관에서 생각하는 스마트를 얘기를 하면 스마트한 그 전자기기를 이용한 그 전자기기를 이용해서 건강관리를 할 때 스마트 헬스라고 얘기를 하는 게 대부분입니다. 그래서 그 AI, IoT 뭐 이런 것들을 이용한 건강관리, 그 다음에 아니면 그 AI가 그 전화를 해서 콜링을 해서 그 상대가 어떤지를, 그 다음에 위험 단어가 뜰 때 바로 사람이 갈 수 있도록 관리를 해주거나, 이런 부분들이 이제 스마트 헬스의 개념으로 보건기관들이 생각을 하고 그렇게 사업들을 진행을 하고 있습니다.
I'd like to thank all the panelists for joining us today. And this is, again, the WHO Keynote Part 1, Sustainable Futures in Smart Cities. And I'd like to invite the audience to interact with some of our panelists as well. And our next session starts at 10:50, and that's going to be on financing. Thank you.
lack of access to water and sanitation, health services, and jobs. And in terms of the climate change, we know that the health impacts of climate change disproportionately affect the vulnerable, especially in developing countries. We know that cities are major contributors to climate change, and cities often face compounded climate risks, and many of the health impacts of climate change are amplified in cities. We know that marginalized groups in developing cities are disproportionately affected, and lower income communities are affected by greater exposure to urban heat and related illnesses. We have many examples of this. We can take Tehran, for example, where children, the elderly, people with chronic illnesses, those living in areas with poor air quality, or who work or spend more time outside, and individuals taking certain medications are especially at risk from urban heat island effects. As with many issues, the urban poor, racial minorities, and others face elevated risks to climate change. For example, in Dar es Salaam, Mexico City, Jakarta, Sao Paulo, the poor are more likely to live in informal and insecure housing at increased risk of flooding and landslides. Also, informal settlements have been the most affected by epidemics, including COVID. While no socioeconomic class is immune to health outbreaks in general, health outbreaks have repeatedly exposed the extreme vulnerability of the urban poor living in slums and informal communities, which, as we saw during COVID, emerged as hotspots for transmission. For example, in Mumbai, a spatial analysis of the location of COVID-19, looking at the concept of containment zones, demarcated areas with positive cases within the city, and revealed that most of Mumbai's containment zones with positive cases within the city were close to the informal settlements. 30% of containment zone epicenters are within a slum, and the maximum distance between the epicenter of a containment zone and the nearest slum was only 800 meters. Since informal settlements have a wide range of demographic and environmental conditions that affect health outcomes, interventions to improve health in informal settlements, including investments in infrastructure, as well as developing awareness campaigns, etc., should really be prioritizing and targeting the emerging hotspots and vulnerable populations at risk. There are many examples of this. We know that dengue epidemics in Rio in 2007 and 2008 occurred largely in the favelas. We know that residents of large, densely packed informal settlements in Latin America and the Caribbean were the most affected by the Zika virus epidemic of 2015. So what is a healthy city? This growing interest in the urban health agenda at the World Bank has led to a new global study on healthy cities. And the report draws upon the WHO and many other pioneering work on healthy cities, using multiple global case studies and the bank's overall experience in resilient, sustainable urban development. In terms of definition, we borrow from the WHO, of course, which focuses on continually creating and improving the physical and social environment, acting to equitably promote the health of people and natural systems at all scales, including by enabling partnership among diverse stakeholders. Briefly speaking, the report provides urban policymakers and practitioners with an action framework. We call it the TIP approach, which stands for Targeted Support Towards Improved Health of the Vulnerable, Integrated Solutions for Healthier Futures, and Preparedness for Future Health Crises. To maximize health outcomes, cities need to target, integrate, and prepare health-positive urban actions, and many of these have been discussed already this morning. Each of these three principles from the framework of targeted, integrated, and prepared are then linked to specific urban actions as entry points for cities spanning 4 key thematic areas, including healthy urban spaces, the WASH agenda, healthy urban food systems, and health service provision in cities. Clearly, this is not an exhaustive list, and a lot more can be done, but this is a framing for discussion. I'd like to just share a few examples of relevant research and urban investments across sectors that the bank has focused on, the World Bank has focused on 4 clusters of health-positive urban actions. This was mentioned earlier, and I think it really does require underscoring the importance of green, vibrant public spaces. We know that when there's limited access to green spaces, there's physical inactivity, type 2 diabetes, increased mortality, cardiovascular morbidity. Many of this has already been mentioned. We also know that lack of safety and safe spaces increases crime hotspots, incidences of sexual harassment, gender-based violence. And we also know that poorly maintained spaces can lead to illegal waste dumping, injuries, vandalism, etc. The bank has an increasing focus on vibrant public space and nature-based solutions. 2 years ago, we published a flagship report on public spaces called The Hidden Wealth of Cities, which introduces a comprehensive framework for operating and maintaining public spaces and really consolidates in-depth global case studies on public space upgrading initiatives. This report then informed our neighborhood upgrading projects in very specific cities, for example, in Dhaka, Bangladesh, and Karachi, Pakistan, and others. And we also have a newly established nature-based solutions program, which is aimed at tackling climate change through leveraging natural assets. The second piece I want to touch upon is on safer housing for the urban poor. So we know that hazardous housing sites can lead to extreme vulnerability to climate change and to disasters, increasing floods, landslides, acute poisoning, toxic contamination. We know that the overcrowding and lack of facilities can increase the spread of infectious disease. We know that weak infrastructure can lead to increased vulnerability to disasters and injuries. And we also know that insecurity of tenure can lead to fear and increased hypertension and diabetes and low birth weight newborns. So considering how poor living conditions in many cities, particularly in urban poor communities, affect people's health outcomes, it's important to recognize that even modest improvements to housing conditions can create significant health gains. Accordingly, the World Bank has invested in improving overall housing value chains with a focus on safer housing of the urban poor. In Morocco, for example, the World Bank supported developing housing policies such as unifying building codes, modernizing housing rental laws, and enabling over 100,000 informal households to access residential mortgage finance. The bank also incentivized private developers to afford housing into affordable housing and to boost retail mortgage markets to become more competitive and affordable. Next, I want to touch briefly on markets and food safety. We know that in poor neighborhoods, there can be limited access to formal markets and increasing exposure to higher health risks. We know that even formal markets can be poorly managed with issues of lack of electricity, sanitation, running water, etc. And we know very well how this can lead to increases of waterborne diseases, fires, injuries, etc. And issues of overcrowding and close contact with livestock and wild animals. And also a lack of coordination and management mechanisms, weak regulations leading to food and safety and hygiene issues, and the increase in foodborne diseases. This is one of the thematic areas that have been less prioritized by the World Bank to date. But after the COVID-19 pandemic, the importance of clean, safe food markets and urban food systems is attracting much more attention. In 2022, the urban sector at the World Bank worked closely with the FAO to jointly launch a community of practice on healthy urban food systems and led a series of discussions on the topic. In Bangladesh, the bank worked with FAO to develop a citywide food market assessment for Dhaka and designed follow-on investments to food market upgrading. In Kenya, a new World Bank project for safer urban food systems seeks to strengthen the linkage between rural peri-urban food producers and urban consumers. As such, we're trying to boost our efforts to promote healthy urban food systems. The water and sanitation agenda, we know the implications of the lack of clean water in terms of poor hygiene, skin diseases, infections, diarrheal diseases. We know what happens when there's a lack of sanitation facilities, fecal transmission of disease, increasing safety risks for women, increased risks of urinary tract infections for women. And we also know the impacts of poorly managed waste. often dumping, leaching toxic chemicals into soils, groundwater incinerating, which also increases greenhouse gas emissions, increases air pollution, and also exacerbates flood risks in cities. And we also know what the exposure to waste can do in terms of infectious waste, urban dengue, malaria, and risks to chemical exposure and injury. So in this section, last but not least, the bank really has contributed a lot to significant progress on improved access to water and sanitation and solid waste management in cities. And our focus is to enable integrated approaches to urban water and waste management for the urban poor. The bank is open for opportunities to scale up financing health actions. And I would say that in particular, we're exploring ways to develop and improve enabling environments for healthy city actions. And there are three key factors that I just want to underscore. One is on coordinating institutions, both vertically and horizontal integration, which can be challenging. Developing city strategies, healthy city strategies, which are important for integration health action. And can be specifically integrated into broader urban development plans and also very specific urban plans. Having dedicated municipal health plans, for example, and also the final piece on sustainable financing, which of course is essential to successful planning and implementation of any healthy city plan. I'll next illustrate the issue of governance and financing for healthy cities using a few examples. First, one of the main concerns for governance and finance for healthy cities is how to coordinate across scales of governance, as well as across multiple sectors. This diagram is supposed to be and is complicated. This diagram actually comes from the Kigali Health Strategic Plan of 2020 to 2024, and it's challenging, as you can see, to establish a locus of responsibility for health decision-making and also the authority to mandate. Issues such as air pollution management are also a good example of the complexities and how it's difficult to enable both vertical and horizontal integration. And a comprehensive effort is really required to address air quality, which of course is caused by actions in very, very many different sectors and often transgress administrative urban boundaries. Some of the ongoing World Bank projects, such as the Greater Cairo Air Pollution Management Project in Egypt, are designed to address the air quality governance issues to some extent by looking into some of these complexities. Another critical area for the improved governance is to make healthy city strategies integrated, targeted, and prepared. And once again, using this TIP framework from the World Bank's Healthy Cities report. This Kigali case shows an interesting evolution of healthy city strategies from the focus on sectors to a focus of health service focus plans towards a more integrated approach to urban issues and health challenges. As part of an informal upgrading project, the bank also helps cities to incorporate diverse needs from all communities into their informal urban planning processes. And one way to do this is linking informal settlement improvements action plans at different levels into city government's formal urban plans, such as urban resilience strategies and healthy city action plans. It's an important process and helps to create fundamental change rather than focusing only on physical improvements. In terms of financing, such governance structures are closely linked to financing mechanisms which are available for healthy city actions. And we all know that there are various financing sources for cities, including domestic sources, intergovernment transfers, local revenues, joint financing, as well as external sources from international institutions, private sector, philanthropic sources. And I'd like to highlight the World Bank's financing mechanisms here. The World Bank has over $35 billion of active urban investments, which cover various sectoral actions to do with housing, green spaces, road safety, safety and security, water, waste, food, and health systems. And when the bank is investing in these projects, we aim to use our investments to strengthen the country's own financing systems. And to do so, we have three financing instruments. We have development policy financing, or DPFs, which are rapidly dispersing financing instruments to efficiently support policy reforms. So these are at the policy level. We have IPFs, which are investment project financing, which are loans or credits to create physical, social infrastructure and service delivery with a medium to long-term period, normally 5 to 10 years. And then we have something called P4R, Program for Results, which links disbursement to funds directly to the delivery of defined results, which motivates governments at different levels to improve their own performance on specific areas. And these programs support urban local governments to enhance their institutional and financial capacities and to mobilize also diverse financing sources, such as from intergovernmental transfers, local revenues, and the private sector or philanthropic sources. I want to quickly present an example from Kinshasa, a multi-sectoral urban resilience project, which was an IPF of 500 million, which is currently under implementation from 2021 to 2026. Kinshasa, a capital city of 17 million people, limited local capacity and in a very low-income country with a GDP of approximately 500. Here, there's extreme high urban poverty rates and devastating disasters. Gully erosion and flooding are common. And to address these complex urban challenges, the bank decided to invest in a regional flagship project. And the project itself is designed with the TIP principles mentioned earlier. And all activities under this project were integrated and target the poorest areas of the city. The project also aims to revise outdated urban planning tools, to strengthen sustainable financing mechanisms. However, translating the design into actual progress is challenging, as it is in any urban context. Some of the challenges are listed here. Intertwined activities which can cause delays, identifying champions, updating regulations takes time. But the point here being that it's a learning process, and it's important to explore the balance between an ideal plan and its feasibility to maximize health co-benefits in our urban investments. So it's designed with a number of different features, an integrated approach, coordinating among different institutions, updating urban planning regulations, and also helping the government in focusing on sustainable financing, finding ways to strengthen their own sources of revenue. I'd like to conclude by reiterating that the World Bank envisions healthy cities for playing a critical role in promoting the health of people and the planet. And it's important for city leaders to focus on the framework because it provides a targeted support. It looks at issues of integration, and it also enhances preparedness. And these principles shown on the slide are not meant to be exhaustive, but could help steer decision makers towards an inclusive, healthy city and towards actions aligned with this framework. There are many more details in the report itself. I just wanted to say that going forward, the bank is really keen to address persistent disparities within cities and to integrate what are sometimes siloed action plans at the city level to prepare for future health crises. And to do so, we continue to advocate and operationalize the agenda in close collaboration with all of you here today. So thank you very much. I'll end there.
Thank you, Dr. Ya, for that keynote speech on healthy cities, revisiting the role of cities in promoting health. I'd like to invite the panelists up, and I realize I didn't actually get to introduce Dr. Ya properly. She is the Senior Social Developmental Specialist from the World Bank. She has over 15 years of working experience in regions focusing on the World Bank's safeguard, World Bank's social safeguard and standards, and in promoting gender and disability inclusion in some of the bank's finance projects. I'd like to invite the panelists. The first person I'd like to introduce is Dr. Lee, Dr. Jung Hong Lee. He is a professor in technology and management from the Graduate School of Information of Yonsei University in Seoul. He is also the director of the Center of Digital Transformation of Technology Management Information Systems Intelligence Lab. He is currently the senior advisory of the National Smart City Committee since 2020 and a working member of the National Data Policy for South Korean government. So he has a lot of policy input in addition to his academic research work. The second panelist is Dr. Wang, Dr. John Jung Wang. He is the Korean International Cooperation Agency, KOCA, SDG Management Team Manager. He majored in urban planning and design when he was a university student, and he earned his doctoral degree with a thesis assessing the links between infra capital accumulation through ODA, urbanization process and economic growth in developing countries. So based on his field experience, he is currently working as an urban development specialist at KOICA. Our third panelist is Dr. Lee, Dr. Yuri Lee. He is the assistant professor at Myunggi College and has been the General Affairs Director of Global Health Board member since 2020. Dr. Yuri Lee has dedicated her academic journey to global health policy. She completed her bachelor's degree in nursing and another BA degree in politics, MPH and PhD in public health at Yonsei University. Later on, she also acquired a Master's of Science degree in global health policy from the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine. She has contributed to various roles, including a technical stint at the World Health Organization's Western Pacific Regional Office and as a research professor at Yonsei's Graduate School of Public Health. And the last person I'd like to introduce is Dr. Rashim Kadian. He is the climate impact area land special. She is. My apologies. She is a climate impact area lead for the well-being of people with the Division of Mitigation and Adaptation of the Green Climate Fund, a very important organization in this area. Dr. Rashmi holds a PhD in climate change mitigation from the Indian Institute of Technology in Delhi, India. She has over 20 years of professional experience across project development, implementation, and impact investing in South Africa. Prior to joining the Green Climate Fund, she was working with the government of India, financial intermediary for various developmental finance institutions. And she has also worked on projects funded by ADB, World Bank, JICA, EIB, and KfW. She has a wide range of portfolio experience. Great. So I'm going to come up and join the panelists. We have our panel is set to conclude at 12 p.m. So I would like to perhaps go around by asking the first question, and then if we have time, we can perhaps invite some questions from the audience as well. Should we go from ladies first to this way? Yes? Okay. Yes, with Dr. Rashmi, can you give us the Green Climate Fund's perspective on financing projects for healthy cities?
Thank you very much. GCF is the largest multilateral fund focusing on climate finance, and one of our impact areas is health and well-being. So we do fund projects through various financing instruments, which are we have a very flexible approach in terms of funding projects. So health is one area which we are focusing on. So health comes with cross-cutting benefits through the projects which GCF funds. In fact, that is the outcome of projects which we are funding in early warning systems, flood mitigation, water security, cities, infrastructure, and so on. So health is not only the focus of specific health-related projects in which we focus on creating climate resilient health infrastructure. Besides, all of our projects have health as one of the core benefits. So far, we have funded about 13 specific health-related projects with a finance of around $500 million, and we are now co-creating larger programs with specific focus on health infrastructure, health resilience, as well as education in our portfolio. Thank you.
Thank you. And Dr. Lee, you do research on healthy cities and have lots of new findings on health perspectives. Can you talk about those?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. It's a great pleasure to share my thoughts on the concept of smart health city and finance mechanism from the health sector perspective. As the presenter delivered earlier, the concept of smart health city is not new. The journey of a health city began with the Ottawa Charter, and the Lanondi report further shaped the perspective by highlighting the importance of health behaviors as key determinants of health. However, it became evident creating a healthy environment requires more resources and efforts than initially thought. The challenges of our era, particularly the COVID-19 pandemic, have brought the forefront the needs for the resilient health system and cities. These challenges include responding to the pandemic, addressing climate change, and managing the health costs associated with the aging population. As many speakers mentioned earlier, the health city concept has evolved to place a greater value on health in its entirety, considering physical, social, and mental well-being. This expanded scope of health promotion and encompasses the health behavior, health environment, and health services, recognizing the interconnectedness of these elements in achieving overall well-being. For decades, there has been a movement toward the health urban livings, as evidenced by over 100 cities adopting health city ordinance in Korea as well. This initiative, influenced by the Health City Alliance, demonstrates a commitment to promoting health living practice and creating environment that support holistic health. Last few months, I tried to analyze the impact of Health City Ordinance on the community health behaviors, such as smoking, alcohol consumption, health food consumption, and the physical activities of community members. The study analyzed the long-term effect of Health City Ordinance on individual and community health behavior, but found no positive impact on the adoption of healthy living practice. Utilizing the several data, the study employs the multi-level difference in difference analysis and interrupted time series analysis, but it concluded that the Health City Ordinance did not significantly affect the reduction in smoking rate or increase in regular physical activities. There are several limitations of study, but the implication of this study suggested that while many cities have agreed with the concept of health city and declared themselves as such, this declaration often function more as political statement or the city level marketing rather than having a substantial impact on individual health. It is challenging to confirm if health city initiative genuinely influence personal health practice and health status, with only a handful of case studies reporting the health city movement contribute to health promotion. This indicates a need for a different approach to the Health City initiative. I strongly believe that the data-driven smart health city could be the solution, the leveraging robust data analysis to create more effective health. To effectively promote health, city must become smart by leveraging data to understand current health status, identify gaps, and the implementation evidence intervention. The WHO highlight the resilience and health security as an essential component of good health. However, there has been relative lack of investment in health information system, especially in developing countries. In this context, the digital technology, including data science and AI, could become a game changer. They enable individual level assessments through the health checkup and monitoring. At the health systems level as well, they facilitate the monitoring and evaluation at the local and national level. At the city level, particularly in terms of the health environment and health services, digital health can provide invaluable insight, fostering living spaces, centers around the health and well-being. If I have more time later, I want to share the funding issue as well.
I'm sure a lot of people would love to find out more. Dr. Ya, I want to come back to you last, if that's okay, because you spoke first. I'd like to go to Dr. Wang. A lot of people in Korea know about KOICA, but for the international audience, could you tell us more about KOICA and also the financing KOICA?
Good morning, distinguished audience. Thank you, moderator. My name is Jongjun Won, and I'm working as an urban development specialist in KOICA, and my role is finding some future direction, how we gonna find implement the project. Before I sharing my opinion, I would like to some comment on the week. The South Korea was approved to join the OECD Development Assistance Committee on November 25th, 2009. And since 2010, November 25th has been celebrated as Development Cooperation Day. And Development Cooperation Week has been held every year around this day. This week is Development Cooperation Week. During this meaningful period, in Songdo, the most international city in Korea, I sincerely congratulate the forum covering the most urgent and important issues, climate crisis, health, and smart cities being successfully held. And I would like to thank Dr. Ya for your presentation, because it's been a while since I graduated from the school, and I'm now working as a practitioner. At that time, just hearing the word urban in Korea dosi makes me feel good and heart flutter. And it was a presentation that made me think back to the times I spent wondering how I could improve the city and what I could do. And I think it was a learning experience that allowed me to find out what concerns the World Bank is currently having, and what plans it has, and what examples it has. KOICA was established in 1991, now 30 years old. The budget size of KOICA has steadily increased since 2010, when Korea joined the OECD DIC. And in the past 2 to 3 years, the budget scale has been rapidly expanding as Korea's responsibility toward the international community has been emphasized. As we pass through the crisis of climate change and the COVID-19 pandemic, global solidarity has emerged as a very important value. And in order to meet the trends of the international community, our government is significantly increasing ODA budget by 40% more than. KOICA's biggest concern right now is how to effectively implement its increased budget where the international community needs it. We are trying to introduce an integrated approach, which is mentioned in the presentation, and in which multiple entities from various fields cooperate, as well as a thematic programmatic approaching. Our government announced at the UN General Assembly held last September that it would further expand support for the climate crisis, health, and digital sectors. Even if I tell you this part, I think the audiences here will have an idea of what I'm trying to say. What you get when we add these words: climate crisis, health, digital, and integrated approach. I think the answer is smart health city, which is the topic of today's forum. It is said that since the Industrial Revolution, the Earth's temperature has risen by 1 degree. The resulting climate change has now become a climate crisis. What is the biggest cause of increasing Earth's temperature? Several scientific analyses indicate that human activity is the main cause. So where has human activity become most active since the Industrial Revolution? It's city. Professor Jeffrey Sachs explains cities as follows in his book. Cities with well-planned and designed infrastructure can maximize economic opportunity, improve quality of life, promote public health, and minimize the negative impact on the natural environment, all while achieving a relatively low carbon economy. Former UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon said in his keynote speech at the Tsinghua University in China in 2018, he said he is convinced that the core cause of the unsustainability of the Earth is the big cities created by large corporation, mass production, and mass consumption. The fight to achieve sustainable development will be won or lost in cities. Creating sustainable cities and small and medium-sized cities is the key. What is needed to effectively lead the fight in the city and protect the people in the living in the city? I think this is information that can be used to analyze the problem from a special perspectives. The origins of modern urban planning includes the Public Act enacted in England in 1848 and the disease map created by British physician John Snow, 1854. The thick smoke in London, 1952. This case can be considered as the first epidemiological investigation, and the COVID-19, which is still ongoing, has brought time that humanity has never experienced before. In Korea, an epidemiological investigation system using spatial information was developed and achieved great result in the initial response stage. Since 2019, KOICA has been supporting 3 smart city projects targeting 3 cities located sequentially on the coast of central Vietnam. The name is Hue Province, Da Nang City, and Quang Nam Province. The names of the 3 projects are Hue Tourism and Culture Smart City Development, and second is Da Nang Green and Smart Urban Resilience Project, and lastly, Quang Nam Smart City Development Project, respectively. The 3 projects are being managed under the name of Smart City Valley program in central Vietnam. The purpose of this program was to establish 3 cities located in similar locations as one special region and provide long-term comprehensive support. Now that we have another project, we are preparing another project that infectious disease surveillance and response system for this region. If this program is evaluated as successful in the future, we are going to replicate it to the other area. I believe that the challenge and opportunity in supporting smart city development through international cooperation is to test the assumptions, analyze the result, create better cases, and share the experiences. Today, MDB, bilateral development agency, academia, urban planning expert, and medical doctor are participating in this forum. I believe that an event like today can be an opportunity to accelerate our challenges. I'd like to thank you for inviting me to such a precious occasion, and thank you for making me feel my heart racing once again. Thank you.
That was great, Dr. Wan, and the words "increased budget" really resonates with me, and that sounds very good for many reasons. Professor Lee Junhong from Yonsei University, you have done a lot of research on cities and also information system and management. And South Korea, as we heard from this morning, a lot of places are 100% urbanized. So there's got to be strategies of going forward for healthy cities. Can you talk through some of those?
Yeah, sure. Good morning, and thanks for the invitation for this particular wonderful event, because it's my first time to come as organized by the WHO. I've been there with the UN and World Bank events as well, but this is my first time, so it's very honored to be here as well. Thanks. I think I just been to Spain, Barcelona. We annually we're having a Smart City Expo and Congress in Barcelona. About 800 cities are coming all together and talk about these things. And I wanted to share with you just a few global trends actually that we are actually following up as well by our country as well. One of the trend after the COVID was that actually a lot of cities has been reformulating their smart city strategies. Focus not only the infrastructure development or mobility kind of improvement. However, mobility is the most actually improve or active area of smart city development. But I think the health and safety and welfare has been actually changing the shift. So they're all talking about inclusive and also talking about safety, health in aspect the health safety cities as well. So I think the topics here, smart health cities, is kind of right tracks and right directions that we are heading right now. Second thing that surely what Korean government in trying to do is I think when we look at the index report, actually I'm working biannually, we are publishing the report called what we call the Smart City Index report, and we try to see the cities, where they're focusing, or how they're using the technology, how they're using the data in where. So that report is very comprehensive report. We are working with the Cambridge in UK, and in that report we try to see some of the key technologies, like as one of our colleagues was mentioning about data-driven smart city or AI-driven smart city has been emerged. And I think the data and IoT becoming a very known technology now to many cities around the world. And that was the kind of another second trend as well. I think that in terms of strategy perspective, Korea and nationally or in Seoul or other cities, Korea has been focused on the data-driven smart city. So we've been building up what we call as a data hub, which has used during the pandemic to actually monitoring when the infected person found out, how actually this has been dispersed to other people. So we try to track them. So that time has been, usually takes 48 hours to inspect these things, but has been reduced to about 10 or 12 minutes. In that time, there was a silo before in Korea to cooperate, but there's a card company, Korean police agency with the controlling the CCTV, all these kind of different organization which was not actually normally get together, work as a team to find out these things, and they've been actually formed these teams. And through that process, we realized that how the data is very powerful in case of this kind of emergency or in terms of this kind of situations. So that was the kind of becoming the more changing of our governance structures we think about these things as well. So I believe that the cities are starting to thinking about on this kind of becoming resilience, how data can be used in different sectors to actually combine together, creating it, and also how the AI can actually use this to helping all this kind of elderly people or vulnerable groups as well. And that was actually one of our very big initiatives right now in Korea right now. Again, traditionally, smart city has been focusing on the green housing and energies against the climate changes. But again, recently, I have a diabetes as well. So I put the IoT sensors on it, and that you can control this thing. If I eat something, it just gives a signal, right? That gives a very, very changing lot of things. And then talking about data to actually follow my health is going, and that becoming, I think that will be the kind of next move for Korea to look at all this health data, live daily kind of health data, how this can be used as kind of for that as well. But there are some challenges here in Korea, or I think it's everywhere. I think after that I discussed with a lot of colleagues back in Barcelona. we are also struggling with how we're going to financing this kind of services as well. So I see a lot of cities trying to do as a pilot, and I think that I see a lot of cities, which is developing countries, also trying hard. I mean, funded by the World Bank or UN, or they're trying hard to actually establish this kind of programs, but they're struggling to how this can be, form the private and public partnerships to go ahead and creating some kind of ecosystems to, fostering this kind of innovations, and that's the kind of challenges here as well. So I think I think we need to find out right formula, right? Yeah. So right formula to work over, and it will be the different countries kind of level, what kind of digitalizations are there for their infrastructure as well. So there are a lot of variables that we have to think about these things to actually form this formula. And I think creating some sustainable business model in health area and as well as the welfare area is quite challenging. Again, the role of cities, role of national kind of institution is very important here to actually fostering these innovations, and that's the kind of I think the very important aspects that we need to think about it. And I think that is the kind of a future of smart city, that will be the role of smart city.
Yeah, I have so many questions regarding instantaneous real-time data feedback. And those are so some of the new types of things that we have to deal with in the future. So I'd like to give the last question from me to Dr. Ya, and then invite people from the audience to engage. So if the organizers could prepare a microphone for the middle of the room, and then if anyone would like to ask a question, please walk up to the microphone and introduce yourselves. Dr. Ya, you already gave us a lot of information on perspectives from the World Bank on project financing and lots of projects. And you're sitting here with many stakeholders. What are some of the ideas or things that jump out at you? What are some of the smart ideas that jumps out at you?
Thank you very much. I think much of what has been said resonates quite deeply, and I think when you asked the question in the previous session about kind of the definition of smart, it was something that resonated and I think has been really ably addressed by the professor who just spoke. And I think a lot of it really comes down to data. And at the bank, I think when we conceptualize of smart cities, we're looking at the effective use of data and digital technologies, and it comes down to kind of using the data in smart ways to improve city planning, management, service delivery, citizen engagement, accountability. So I think it's to do with data. And we know that cities generate a huge amount of data. Cities are all about people, they're about businesses, they're about governments. And all of this is generating data, particularly in the health sector. And I just wanted to touch upon maybe just a quick example of kind of the power of that data, and it goes back to the climate change examples we were discussing as well. It's just a quick example from a project in which it was a Rwanda urban mobility project in which a very simple use of spatial analysis was used, and actually I say simple, it was actually satellite data was used to measure road surface temperatures and to identify the location of heat islands in the city. And this data was then used to really map out extreme heat considerations and used in a feasibility study, which was then used to design a central bus terminal. So it comes down to a bus terminal and people having a place to stand in the shade. So it's a simple example, but also a powerful example. And so I think, to me, what's resonated is this set of interlinked ideas around good data and the power of that good data to address the challenges that we face in urban environments, be they climate-induced or other-induced. So I think that's just one suggestion there. But of course, it's not only about the data. The institutions have to be there. The human enablers and the champions need to be in place. And there have to be mechanisms for also making sure that we're learning from the past, reflecting on what's worked and what's not worked, and finding ways to do this in a sustainable way. So I'll stop there. Thank you.
We have more tools and more information to make make smarter decisions and choices. Please, from the audience, I invite you to engage with the panel. Any questions from the audience? There's a gentleman in the back. Is there another question? We can get you the microphones early, so there's less lag.
저는 한국말로 말씀을 드립니다. 제 편으로 봐서 맨 왼쪽 패널 분들로 보면 맨 오른쪽 분이시죠? 그분이 지금 답변이라고 그랬고 그걸 실시간으로 모니터링을 하신다 그랬는데 상당히 중요한 진전이라고 생각되고 그 헬스시티를 만드는데 상당히 중요한 요인이다 그런 생각을 하게 됩니다. 왜 그러냐면 저희 아버님이 외과 전문의셨는데 그런데도 그 심근경색이라고 그래서 갑자기 그 사망을 하셨어요. 근데 그 이제 심근경색의 경우 보면 보통 평시에는 아무 증상이 없고 뭐 심전도나 여러 가지 그 검사를 해도 정상으로 나오거든요. 그런데 이제 꼭 그 이상이 생겨야 심장은 이제 이상이 발생돼야 그 이제 검사를 하면 그 검사의 이상 데이터가 캐치가 되는데 그래서 이제 심장병의 경우에 한 일주일 입원을 시켜서 그 이제 운동 부하를 걸면 어느 시점에서 심장에 이제 이상이 오면 그걸 캐치를 해서 여러 가지 검사를 진행하는 방식은 이제 고전적으로 써왔는데 우리 그 패널 분과 같이 당뇨병도 뭐 상당히 위험한 병 중에 하나인데요. 그 심장병 같다고 생각이 되는데 갑자기 쇼크가 오잖아요. 근데 이제 그걸 실시간 모니터링하는 게 상당히 중요하다고 생각이 됩니다. 근데 그 제가 이제 이 송도로 이사를 온 게 2009년도인데 그때 이제 최초 그 스마트 이 레지던스 주택이죠. 이게 이제 포스코 건설에서 만든 건데 거기에 보면은 그 건강을 체크하는 시스템이 되어 있어요. 근데 그게 잘 활용이 안 되더라고요. 그래서 왜 그런가 했더니 그 센서들 그러니까 체크하는 센서들이 상당히 불편하게 돼 있고 그 다음에 그 데이터가 이제 어느 그 집중이 되는데 그 통신도 원활치가 않고 그 다음에 뭐 그런 면에서 거의 활용이 안 되더라고요. 근데 이제 많이 발전이 돼서 우리 그 패널분과 같이 이제 센서를 항상 부착을 하고 그 센서 성능이 좋아서 그 모니터링이 정확히 되고 그런 건 상당히 진전이 됐다고 보는데 그 어떻게 보면 저 송도가 그 저희 아파트 제가 지금도 거주하고 있는 그 아파트를 휴시로 해서 그 헬스 시티의 휴시를 연 건데 뭐 크게 저기 고도화되고 있지를 않아요. 그래서 오늘 이번 기간 중에 그걸 그 고도화되고 그 다음에 정확성을 높이고 그 다음에 사용하기 편리하게 그렇게 발전시키면 좋겠다 그런 생각이 들어서 열심히 제가 이제 참여를 해봤는데 그런 면에서 좀 이 패널 분들은 어떤 생각을 하시는지 말씀을 좀 해주셨으면 좋겠습니다.
I will speak in Korean if you don't mind. 그 헬스 데이터 부분이나 이런 것들은 사실은 저희 대한민국에서 굉장히 많은 시도를 하고 있는데요. 지금 이제 좀 시작하는 단계인 것 같아요. 그러니까 디바이스 자체가 좀 더 사람 몸에 부착해가지고 이제 생활형 의료 기기로 이렇게 하면서 하는 부분들이 굉장히 좀 뭐랄까 지금 이제 초기 단계로 좀 시작한다고 보거든요. 예전에 있었지만 일단은 가격도 비싸고 여러 가지로 저희가 어포더블 하지 않았던 부분들도 있어요. 그래서 그런 부분들이 있는데 제가 좀 말씀드리고 싶은 거는 굉장한 어떤 이 데이터와 AI의 어떤 저희는 이제 데이터가 밸류가 가장 높은 곳이 어디냐라는 걸 보거든요. 그냥 섹터가 보면 이제 헬스 분야가 가장 크다고 저희는 보고 있어요. 그러니까 모빌리티는 이제 거의 많이 성숙돼 있다고 보는데 스마트시티의 다음이 뭐냐라고 봤을 때 저희는 헬스 쪽이라고 보고 있거든요. 그래서 아마 송도가 이제 시작한 것이 스마트시티로 이제 여기 개념 자체가 이제 시작을 하고 도시 자체 인프라도 그렇게 깔렸지만 사실 그때 당시만 해도 저희는 인프라 중심으로 많이 생각을 했었어요. 근데 지금은 시민이 체감하고 이제 환자가 체감할 수 있는 그런 서비스의 생각으로 많이 이제 서비스 관점에서 많이 그러니까 좋은 서비스를 줘서 결국에는 시민의 삶의 질이 높아지는 것이 중요하기 때문에 그런 부분에 좀 더 포커스를 두고 좀 진행을 하고 있어요. 다만 이제 데이터를 자유롭게 쓸 수 있느냐 없느냐에 대한 부분에 있어서 이 지금 우리나라가 좀 정보 보호라든지 이런 거에 대한 그 규제가 굉장히 세거든요. 그래서 이런 부분들이 문제가 좀 많이 풀려야 되는데 아까 말씀드렸던 것처럼 그 역학조사 시스템 서울에 한국에서 저희 했던 코비드에서 그 썼던 그 시스템이 그 데이터의 어떤 그런 영역들을 깨고 이제 룰을 깬 거죠. 깨고 한번 같이 해봐서 그걸 만든 거였거든요. 그때 그 데이터의 밸류가 엄청 높다는 거는 다 모든 사람들이 인지를 한 것 같아요. 그래서 거기에 대한 중요성은 굉장히 크다고 보고 있고 거기로 달려가고 있는 상황인데 여하튼 법제도적인 측면에서 좀 많이 개선이 돼야 된다라고 이제 볼 수 있을 것 같습니다. 네.
I'd like to, yeah, please, and I'd like to add on to a question to some of the financing agencies. Do financing agencies finance high tech like these?
Regarding his comment, can I say in Korean as well?
Oh, please,
yeah.
that'd be great.
그 실제로 그 스마트 헬스 홈에 해당하는 것들을 이제 일부 건설사에서 이제 상품들을 지금 내놓고 있는 상황이고요. 사실 이제 스마트 헬스 홈에 해당되는 부분은 이제 집 안에서 IoT 기능을 이제 활용해서 실시간으로 뭔가 이제 위기 상황에 있는 아까 이제 뭐 하드어택 같은 상황이 왔을 때 요걸 이제 실시간으로 모니터링하고 이제 AI가 바이탈 사인이나 이런 것들을 이제 실시간으로 체크를 해서 뭔가 이상 징후가 발견이 되면 의료진에게 이제 노티파이하는 이런 시스템들을 이제 만들어 나가고 있는 상황인 것 같습니다. 그리고 이 스마트 헬스 홈이 사실 이제 홈에서 그치면 안 되고 보건의료 체계하고 이제 연결이 되는 것들이 필요한데 주로 이제 뭐 스마트 건강관리센터라고 해서 그 해당 주민들의 이제 등록된 사람에 한해서 일부 이제 헬스 그 모니터링들 특히나 이제 그 웨어러블 디바이스를 통해서 오는 데이터들 혹은 이제 건강 검진을 통해서 온 데이터들 그리고 기존에 이제 많은 의료 서비스를 이용하면서 얻게 된 데이터들을 이제 합쳐서 건강 관리를 이제 실시간으로 진행하고 필요로 되는 경우 이제 뭐 헬스 에듀케이션이나 혹은 이제 그 상급 의료기관으로의 이제 리퍼 같은 것들이 현재 논의는 되고 있는데 아직 이제 현실화까지는 되지 않은 것으로 그렇게 조금 알고 있습니다.
Learning so
Yeah,
much.
regarding the financing issue, let me add one more thing.
Yeah, sure. Or the other speakers could chime in as well. And then I see another speaker, another question over there. So let's get the microphone over, and then after this question, you can ask. Anyone would like to comment on financing for these types of real-time high-tech data? How are the financing agencies thinking about this?
I think we have a lack of time at this moment, but to respond to his question and then her comment on that in a smart city here, in terms of some digital cell phone based smart healthcare here, data based on healthcare. I'm going to speak in Korean because translator is so great. So that's why I can't speak response and to answer to his question and her comment. 저는 국립중앙의료원 원장을 했었고요. 그래서 그 당시에 우리 그 메르스 때 이제 그 시스템을 만든 장본인이기도 한데 그거는 그것대로 지금도 어쨌거나 코비드 19에 굉장히 이제 작동을 잘했고 그다음 또 하나는 지금 전국적으로 하고 있는 시스템 하나를 만들었는데 그 카디악 어레스트가 났을 때 사실은 심폐소생협회나 다른 데서 심폐소생 CPR 라이센스가 있는 분들은 본인들이 원하면 레지스터를 내셔널리 하게 됩니다. 그래갖고 그분들이 어떻게 되냐면 현재 카디악 어레스트가 딱 나면 전국 어디서든 그러면 바로 그 셀폰에 나는 받겠다 이렇게 하는 분들한테 푸시업 서비스가 가요. 그러면 그 동네에서 바로 그 사이트에 셀폰에서 지도까지 다 떠서 바로 갈 수 있는 시스템을 2016년에 우리나라에서 만들었고 그걸 Heart Hero라고 해서 뭐냐면 정말 CPR 할 수 있는 히어로들이 여기저기 다 있어갖고 바로 푸시업 서비스를 받아갖고 전국적으로 어디서나 그래서 아파트 콘도미니엄에서 그런 일이 일어나면 아파트나 바로 푸시업 서비스가 거기에 있는 사람들한테 갑니다. 그래서 세이브된 그 사람들이 많고 퍼블릭 스페이스는 뭐 미국에서는 뭐 시애틀에서도 하고 샌디에고에서도 하지만 아무튼 여기에 AED가 정말 유비퀴터스하게 모든 장소에 깔려 있어서 그 AED가 깔려 있는 것도 지금 데이터베이스로 모두 실시간으로 알 수 있는 어플리케이션이 만들어졌는데 여러분들이 쓰고 계시는지는 제가 잘 모르겠습니다. 그래서 사실은 지금 준비 단계뿐이 아니라 2016년부터도 계속 되고 있다라는 말씀을 드립니다. 예. 감사합니다.
That's great to know. With heart attacks, every second counts, and it'd be good to have those technologies and be able to use it. I know we're drawing a close to almost noon, towards the closing of our session, and this has been very, very dynamic. Perhaps I would just generally open and ask everyone to say a final word, your take-home message from the first World Health City Forum, something that you could work on this year, and when you come back to the second World Health City Forum, you'd be able to share.
Thank you very much for these interesting discussions. So I come from the Climate Fund. So our mandate is to drive countries to their low emission and climate resilient pathways. So as we speak about infrastructure, cities, health, and the nexus between all everything, including the extreme weather events, the vector-borne diseases, as our World Bank colleague explained about some of the very interesting projects which they already have in place are under implementation. And so are we at GCF also designing some very interesting projects. And in fact, in GCF, we focus on impacts. So we have a flexible range of instruments, as I indicated earlier also. So we take up the first risk. So in terms of addressing the barriers, so whether we have some project which is having a climate rationale but focuses on data, as the gentleman recently mentioned that data is very important as far as we look at a health crisis in cities, saving lives and so on. So such kind of projects with the climate rationale are always welcome at GCF. So we are ready to take the first risk in terms of financing such initiatives. They are to be country driven. They are to be part of the national determined contributions and the adaptation plans, including the health adaptation plans. So such kind of innovations and the approach of GCF to take on such projects is very much flexible So that's one thing which I may like to say, and finally conclude that it has been a very interesting discussion, not from the climate perspective, but from the health perspective.
right.
So there are a lot of takeaways from these discussions, which we may like to engage with our partners, with our stakeholders, to develop such projects focusing on health in cities. Thank you.
Thank you. Short concluding remarks.
Regarding the financing mechanism for the responding to the cost increase in the health sector, I thought that we need to control the expenditure while meeting the unmet service needs. Actually, globally, the value-based healthcare or the value-based payment system emerged as a solution focusing on reducing cost while improving the outcome efficiencies and effectiveness. Adopted in various regions, including US, several European countries, and Australia, and some African countries such as Ghana, and of course Korea. Value-based healthcare aligns the financial incentives with the patient health outcomes, emphasizing quality over quantity in healthcare services. For the integration of the digital health technology and the shift toward the value-based healthcare could signal a major transformation for the smart health city. To realize the vision, we need to sustainable financing model and the commitment to the value-based healthcare and strategic use of digital health technology. That's all to deliver.
Thank you very much. I think lots of take-home messages. First of all, thank you very much for inviting the World Bank. It's really a pleasure to be here. I've certainly learned a lot, and just realizing and reflecting on the synergies across all of the areas of work. There's so many areas of mutual interest and opportunities for collaboration. I think for me, I'm an anthropologist by training, and I think as I was sitting here reflecting, I was thinking that I really want to learn more and reflect more the lived experience, and to really bring people back into the center. It's about data, but data is about people. So reflecting a little bit more on all of these areas of intervention, and getting a sense from the lived experience of what it means to be vulnerable, and to hear the voices of the poor in these contexts, and then to reflect those lessons learned from real lived experience back into our programming. So it's about data, but we mustn't forget the people. Thank you.
I would like to speak in Korean. 첫 번째 그 세계 건강 도시 포럼 개최에 정말 반가운 마음이 들었었고요. 2회 때는 제가 그 저희 코이카의 사업 사례를 좀 소개를 해드리면 좋겠다는 생각을 하고, 10회 때는 또 이렇게 모더레이팅도 하고 했으면 한다는 희망을 가져봅니다. 그 코이카의 프로젝트는 그 저희 정부의 예산이고, 이 정부 예산은 국민의 세금입니다. 그래서 소중하게 사용되어야 하고요. 그 관점에서 저희가 프로젝트를 지원할 때에는 그리고 저희의 주요 파트너는 개발도상국입니다. 그래서 그들의 문제를 해결할 수 있는가, 우리의 그 어떤 그 고급 기술을 전수하는 것보다는 적절한 기술이라도 그들의 문제를 해결할 수 있는가에 초점을 맞추고 있습니다. 그래서 이 관점에서 아주 간단한 기술이라도 그들의 문제를 해결할 수 있다면 저희는 많은 방면으로 지원을 해드리고 있습니다. 그리고 그 늘어난 예산을 효과적으로 또 우리 국민의 어떤 책임을 다할 수 있도록 하기 위해서 열심히 노력을 하고 있습니다. 앞으로 이 포럼이 조금 더 계속해서 이렇게 발전해 나가기를 기원하겠습니다. 감사합니다.
Yeah, I think probably I think many people don't realize, because there is a what we call a living net concept is operating right now in Incheon as well. So it's basically the concept is the bridging between people and technologies to actually how the people are reflecting on they're using the new technology. And we are working on one of the health systems right now with the kids having a problem with the fat issues as well. So I will bring that resource, what are the kind of value of data for next year, and probably let us to meet together again and try to find the opportunity here as well. Thank you for invitation.
Let's give a round of applause. And also, I'd like to thank the World Health Organization for organizing this conference and bringing the topic of health to healthy cities. Thank you.
Thank you very much, our excellent panel and our moderator. And thank you all for joining this session and really bringing the health in forefront of agenda and need for strong data and also make health impacts are one of the key indicators of any financing projects. Thank you very much for all your contributions. Thank you. Please stay with us to take picture. Thank you.
Should we stand up or?
Yeah, we stand here. Stand over here.